What's the story of how you chose this ridiculous career of ours?
Interesting. Thanks for the question, Stevie. So how I got into advertising, I think I've always been in the arts. Yeah, I've always been sort of like a creative. I studied creative arts in the university. But I had other things on my mind, sort of like music, film. And then so that's what I had planned. But I ended up, as a speechwriter doing my 1 year mandatory service. And that was like my first foray into writing. And from speech writing, I sort of got tired of writing for Nigerian politicians. Yeah? And I decided to be a little more creative. And that's how I went to art school. No, well, not proper art school because we don't have so many of that here, or we didn't have then. But I went to a school, honed my craft and just took my experiences from music, from film, documentaries making, and I just channeled it into writing, copywriting, and I think that's how I stumbled. I like to use the word stumble. That's sort of how I stumbled into it. Yeah. How did you get into advertising, Stevie?
Well, it was a little bit of a similar journey. When I was growing up, I always really liked to write and make things. I just found that I expressed myself through words that was the easiest thing for me. But I kind of didn't really know what to do with that. I didn't really think that being an author or trying to write a book was like a real career choice. I didn't think you could really make money doing that. And so it wasn't until I got to college where there happened to be an advertising program that I learned what a copywriter was. And I learned that that was the person that got to make scripts for ads and make the things that would appear on TV for brands. And that's when it first clicked that like, oh, that's a way to use my ability to write, but also make money doing it and have things get seen by the world and sort of really have like a real professional career. And once I kind of learned that that was even an option, I sort of threw myself into it and took all the classes I could and tried to work as many agencies as I could get into. I would just like beg them to let me hang out and do things for them. And kind of consistently really fell in love with just being able to write and solve problems. So that's kind of how I got into it. It wasn't on purpose either.
Can you tell me or tell us about some of the best works you've been part of, making either as a writer or as a creative director, or as hanging out in one of those many agencies that you did?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I just love to make things all the time and solve problems in interesting ways. So I really love, just being able to get to do that every day. I think some of my most favorite work is work that doesn't really look like ads a lot of times, but figures out how to like express an insight or an idea in just a way that really speaks to people. Recently, the campaign that I've gotten to work on that is the most exemplary of that I'm just was super fun to make and I'm really proud of was for my client Visit Iceland. So we've been working for them for about 2 years. We started working with them during the pandemic, and recently we did a campaign where we responded to the video that was launched by Mark Zuckerberg and Meta, where they announced that they were going to become Meta and they were creating this metaverse where everything would be virtual and we would all interact through headsets and everything would be this digital world. And of course, everybody started sort of making fun of it and, created this huge meme storm all over the world where everyone was like, what is this like fake virtual universe? And so we created a response video from Iceland where we introduced the Iceland verse instead, which is of course a very real place that you can go to right now with no VR headsets or anything. And it was just a super funny take on kind of internet culture and this idea of living in this like fake place when there's such awesome places like Iceland to go that are already out there.
Some said it's not possible. Some said it's out of reach. To them, we say it's already here. Seriously, look, it's right here. And what do we call this not-so-new chapter in human connectivity? The Iceland verse. Enhanced, actual reality without silly-looking headsets.
And it was one of those ideas that came to life in like super fast time. It took like 10 days. Our client said, "We love it, go make it." Turned out really, really well, and started kind of really, it hit a nerve and took off all over the place. And so I'm really proud of that, just because it was such a moment where a quick insight and observation and a client all aligned to like just make a little moment of magic that people really responded to. So that's one of the ones I think is my favorite right now. For you, I know you've worked on a lot of international brands and, you know, major clients. Like, how do you pick your favorites? Which ones are yours?
Okay, so I think by a long mile, the works that I would categorize as my favorite are the ones that like had real life effects, you know, on consumers. So not, and interestingly, not necessarily for brands. I mean, I like brands that get the bills paid. You know, I really love brands. But I think the two works that come to mind, one was like a pro bono job, and another was like a Father's Day celebratory art. Yeah, you know, I think those two stand out for me as works that I'm really proud of. I think the Father's Day one was born out of an insight around how African dads hardly show affection, you know, to their wards. You know, they love them. The way we show our love is by providing, by ensuring the bills are paid, by ensuring the fees are paid. But, you know, in terms of, hugging your dad or kissing your dad or telling your dad I love you, it's so alien in a typical African home, Nigerian home especially, you know. And so we felt like, the team felt like, you know, why not genuinely take a stab at this and just see how, you know, it pans out. And I think for me, that was like the greatest shocker, because when we started, I genuinely didn't think that it was so much of a big deal. So I grew up in a house where, you know, I used to tell my dad I love you, you know, I used to tell my mom I love you, and they used to say that to me, you know, and to the kids, maybe because we're small, maybe because they were extremely literate, you know. But I think I didn't have that, you know. So in my mind, I felt like, nah, it's alien. And to be honest, I argued, you know, vehemently to say, guys, why are we wasting our time, you know, on such an idea? Like, I like it, it makes sense, but you'll be shocked that a lot of dads actually tell their kids, I love you. But yeah, we did that social experiment. And I think out of maybe about 7 or 8 dads made the cut, but we called over 15 dads. And Stevie, I'm not joking, not one dad said, I love you.
Oh my God.
Daddy, I called to just say I love you.
Okay. No problem.
No problem, sir. No problem, sir. I just called to say I love you, sir.
Okay. What about your brother? Paul?
He's fine.
He's fine.
He's fine, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Everything is fine. I just called to say I love you, sir.
Thank you very much. God bless you.
Amen,
The
sir.
Lord will continue to increase you
Amen, sir.
and increase your work as well.
Amen, sir. Amen, sir.
Remain blessed. Thank you, my son.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Like, not one Nigerian dad said, like, you had dads asking, have you been kidnapped, you know, or you need money, you know, just things like that. And I think for me, when we put out that film, you know, he had quite a lot of people in their feelings, you know, and then he had quite a lot of people actually reaching out to their dads to actually tell them, I love you. You know, I got like a couple of, you know, mails, messages, you know, telling me that, oh, thanks, but I actually called my pops, and my dad was wanting, why are you telling me I love you? But I mean, they did it all the same. So I like those kind of, jobs, things that have like real life consequences, and it's not just about selling, a brand or trying to get someone to pick up a soda or something. Yeah, so I think that would rank like tops for me.
This isn't something I experienced, but this is something that's true for a lot of people. Like, how did you approach figuring that out and getting to the point where you did end up making the campaign and using that insight?
Yeah. So I think I think that's where the place of being a good a listener, comes to play. I was creative director at that time, slash copywriter, but I was majorly in charge of the team, So and I think this is for leaders also. Sometimes you just need to feed off the energy of your team. You need to. It might not make sense to you. You might not think that this will be a killer of an idea, but I think if you are fortunate to have really talented people around you and you trust their competence and you see that fire burning, I think sometimes you should let go. I know that at the end of the day, the decision lies with the creative director on ideas to push forward or not. But I think for me that was a truly learning experience. I had like a couple of team members that really felt strongly about the idea, and even though I knew the idea was a thing, I so generally I knew that, oh yes, African dads don't show love. We all know that if you ever grown up in an African home, but I didn't think that it would have such a profound effect on people. So when guys came, I thought like, yeah, okay, I like the idea. I think it's a space that we're in, makes sense, but is it strong enough? But I could feel the energy from the other guys, I could, and for once I said, what, maybe put that your creative director's heart, and actually just, let's see where this can go. And I think that's something a lot of creative directors should learn to do most times. It's not always about you. It's not always about your idea. It's not always about what you want to bring to life. So I think that's what I would say sort of, allowed me just go on with the idea. I said, what, okay, let's see where this will go. So the biggest thing that we sort of struggle with, especially with the international community, and I think this is just solely based off of the award shows and all. It's context, it's context. I think the one thing we really need you, or really need communities to understand about this market is context. Africa is a very rich, it's a rich place. It's rich in tradition. It's rich in customs. In Nigeria alone, there are over 300 languages. They're like over 400 tribes. And so there's a lot of richness. And I think if you don't have context, there's a probability that you would miss it. You miss what the message is. You miss what the story is. Like you miss it. So I think that's clearly one thing that it would be nice to to get people to try and understand the real African context, Nigerian context. And I'm using Nigerian because that's my my primary market, even though we create works for other parts of Africa. But just being able to, and I think the moment we have that, you like I said earlier, the work becomes more visible. Like you see it, and then you, beyond just seeing it, you understand it. It makes sense to you. I think the lack of context, is what has made it seem like our stories are not out there. Our stories are not, but clearly it's because context is missing. So I think that's one thing I be nice that people get, people acquire in terms of understanding, and many of the works we create here, are born out of rich insights, are born out of like the context exists, so it's just actually understanding. Many clients, I mean, sometimes I see some of the works, coming from Europe, and America, and you can see how executionally or craft wise is top tier, like it's pristine, it's crazy, but then I'm asking myself, where's the insight, where's the
idea?
Exactly. I try not to use the word. I try not to use the word, but yeah, like no way. Where is it in this entire? Like this is just like a show of force, But I think it's quite the reverse for us over here because most of the works that we create are born out of, that's the only way you can even speak to the African consumer. To be honest, that's the only way you can speak to Nigerian consumer. You need to immerse your storytelling. You need to immerse your idea in culture. You need to immerse it in the realities of people, and I think that's something that we do so much of, but isn't being recognized, isn't being seen, isn't being heard. So I think that's one thing that would be really nice for us to get out there and to get it out there quickly. Yeah.
And one of the things that I really loved about some of the work that you've done, you worked on Heineken and Pepsi Max, which are, global brands, but then you were creating work, particularly with Heineken, that was meant to sort of translate this international brand into a brand that could do what you're saying and speak to people in Africa and Nigeria. How did you go about doing that? When you get assignments like that, where it's taking this global entity and translating it through the lens people need to have.
I mean, those works were cool. Albeit it was my former life, of course, you know that, but they were, they were cool. I think for the Heineken work, it was a global campaign that was out there. It was, I think, the more behind the star campaign. I think they had, if I'm not mistaken now, Benicio as the global ambassador, and they were going to try to tell that story here, and I think it became apparent that it made it clear that your works here need to be born out of reach inside, and I think what the team then all we did was, to be honest, to sort of just re-engineer the entire process, to say what insights can run parallel to the Heineken brand. So, for instance, Heineken is, it's an international brand, is world famous, but has very strong heritage in, I think, the Netherlands or so. I think it's found in quite a lot of countries, and so we had those type of parallels, and we sort of ran that, juxtaposed that with Nigerian insight. So, for instance, as Nigerians, we say this: you probably find a Nigerian in every country on earth. Like if you go to if you even go to the farthest part of the world, there's probably a Nigerian there living and thriving. So Nigerians are scattered all over the globe, but the truth is they're also very homely. So we're also very indigenous. For instance, in Nigeria, the particular tribe, wherever they may be across the entire world, when it comes to like December, everybody goes back home. Everybody. So I think it was basically just unearthing insights, and I think the moment we had those, those locally relevant insights, everything else was like a plug-in. So the global guys wanted a known face. They wanted like our own type of Benicio. So we did that in person of Jidenna, the Nigerian American-based Nigerian musician. They wanted the product to feature. We had, so I think in terms of domesticating the work, and it's something that we do for a lot of global brands, because at the end of the day, why don't I just take that ad and run it in Nigeria? Like the ads are already there. Like you made the ad for those, so why not just take those ads and bring them to to this market to run? But that's where the role of the insight comes. To say, what we need to these stories need to be born out of insights that that Nigerians can relate with. And in the case of Heineken, it actually worked wonders for them. The stories were really liked, and the thing got got the product back with consumers. So I think for me, one of the key things I always try to do in terms of taking global work and bringing it home is saying, okay, yes, this work does exist, but what is the equivalent here in terms of the insights, and what, once you unearth those insights, once you get those those locally relevant insights, I think everything else just sort of plugs in. We did the exact same thing with Max, and we've done it with a couple of other global brands.
Jolomi, it was so awesome to get to talk to you, and I really appreciated your perspective, and I learned a lot myself about how I need to work on speaking less and listening more as a creative director. So I'm going to work on that. But it was awesome to get to talk to you and hear about all the work that you've been making.
Amazing, Stevie. I think the likewise over here. It's been an amazing couple of minutes, and I think this is the type of thing that ultimately spurs us to to actually create better work and to build stronger communities, creative communities. I think it's been fabulous chatting with you, and of course shout out to the guys that enabled this, that made this happen. I think they also deserve thumbs up and all. So Stevie, dope meeting you, man.
Thanks, Jolomi.